London, in the heart of autumn, where the rain never quite stops and secrets linger in the air. A quiet architecture student stumbles into a fiery barista, their clash sparking more than just spilled coffee. But when a wealthy stranger steps in with a gaze too sharp, the balance of fate begins to tremble. Friendship, desire, and jealousy tighten like an invisible net, pulling them deeper with every breath. And just as eyes lock in that first dangerous moment, everything is about to ignite. Part 1. An unexpected encounter in London. The rain had a way of softening the city, as if London itself wanted to whisper secrets only to those who lingered long enough beneath its grey skies. The streets near the River Thames glistened in the drizzle, lamps glowing like small beacons through the early autumn haze. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and roasted coffee drifting from Covent Garden, a scent that promised warmth against the damp chill. It was a day that seemed ordinary, yet something unseen hovered between each raindrop, something waiting to unfold. Ethan walked with careful steps, his umbrella tilting slightly against the wind, his shoes tapping softly over the slick pavement. To most who passed, he looked composed, almost distant. His tall frame carried with the quiet precision of someone used to observing more than speaking. Inside, however, his thoughts shifted restlessly, circling the weight of unfinished drawings, unspoken fears, and memories that lived like shadows pressed against the walls of his heart. He preferred silence, the kind that allowed him to hide behind sketches and architecture books, rather than stand in the center of attention. The city comforted him because its noise was not his, and yet, on that drizzly afternoon, the city would no longer let him disappear. The cafe appeared like a lantern in the mist, its windows glowing golden and soft, inviting him in. Ethan stepped inside, shaking off droplets from his coat, the bell above the door chiming with a delicate ring. The interior wrapped him immediately in warmth. Polished wood, the steady hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of voices, and the faint clink of cups meeting saucers. For a moment he paused, soaking in the atmosphere, then moved toward the counter with a quiet determination to order and retreat to a corner seat where he could watch the rain in peace. But fate, always subtle before it strikes, placed Liam there. Behind the counter, Liam moved quickly, his every gesture sharp with energy, as though his body carried a storm just beneath the skin. His eyes, clear and fiery, darted across the cafe as he worked, one hand reaching for cups, the other wiping the counter, his shoulders taut with the rhythm of the day. He was the kind of presence that filled a room even when silent, a presence that unsettled those unprepared for its intensity. Where Ethan was the calm surface of a pond, Liam was the sudden ripple that broke it. When Ethan reached the counter, he shifted slightly to adjust the strap of his bag. At that exact moment, Liam turned to place a tray of steaming mugs on the counter's edge. Their movements collided, a sharp thud followed by the soft spill of coffee sliding across the polished surface. Ethan gasped quietly, pulling back, while Liam's eyes snapped toward him with a flicker of irritation that quickly gave way to surprise. Time seemed to pause there. The sound of rain outside blurred into background music as the two of them locked eyes. Ethan felt the weight of the barista's gaze, intense and searching, while his own pulse fluttered like a bird startled into flight. Liam, in turn, saw not just a clumsy customer, but something deeper, though he could not yet name it. The moment held a fragile silence, broken only by the faint dripping of coffee onto the counter, drop by drop. Before either could speak, the door opened again, and another figure entered. The chime of the bell announced Noah. Noah carried the room differently. Where Ethan disappeared into corners and Liam ignited like fire, Noah glided, his presence unfolding like a practiced melody. His tailored coat was free of raindrops as though the weather had bent to avoid him, and his confident stride made the cafe itself feel like a stage prepared for his entrance. The son of a wealthy family, Noah had been taught to command attention, yet beneath his effortless charm lived a quiet loneliness that even he dared not name aloud. He approached just as Ethan stepped back, still flustered from the small collision. With an easy smile, Noah closed the distance, his hand brushing lightly against Ethan's shoulder as if to steady him. His words were polite, his tone soft, but his gaze lingered longer than courtesy required. It was a gaze that did not merely see it selected, claimed, and quietly challenged anyone who might stand in its way. Liam noticed instantly. Though Noah's smile was directed at Ethan, Liam felt the burn of it like a silent provocation. His chest tightened with something unfamiliar, a sudden rush of protectiveness mingled with jealousy, though he had known this quiet architecture student for only a few moments. It was not rational, yet it surged through him like lightning cracking against storm clouds. He wiped the counter with sharper motions, his jaw tightening as if to ground himself against the pull of emotion. Ethan, unaware of the silent battle forming, felt his own unease. He was not used to being the center of attention, and Noah's gaze, confident and unwavering, unsettled him. Something within him stirred, a mix of curiosity and caution, as if his heart recognized the beginning of a path he had not meant to walk. The three of them stood there for a breath too long, the cafe's hum dimming in comparison to the tension weaving invisibly between them. Outside, the drizzle grew heavier, rain tapping insistently against the window panes, echoing like a heartbeat growing louder with each second. As Noah leaned closer to order his drink, his voice carried the smooth cadence of someone used to getting what he wanted. Ethan lowered his eyes, unsure where to place his attention, while Liam's hand stilled on the counter, the cloth clenched tightly within his fist. Something delicate yet dangerous had begun. It was the kind of beginning no one notices until it has already tightened its grip, the kind of encounter that seems accidental but lingers in memory like the echo of a song. Ethan would later recall the warmth of the cafe, the spill of coffee, the sharpness in Liam's gaze, and the certainty in Noah's smile. He would recall it as the moment the ground beneath his quiet life shifted, just slightly, enough to set everything else into motion. And as the rain fell harder outside, wrapping London in its silvery veil, the invisible threads of fate wove tighter, binding three strangers who were no longer strangers at all. What none of them knew was how quickly those threads would tangle, how swiftly a single gaze could ignite rivalry, and how profoundly a single afternoon could alter the course of three hearts. The cafe door closed behind another customer, the bell chiming softly, but for Ethan, Liam, and Noah, the sound marked something far greater than a casual entrance. It was the sound of a story beginning, a story they could not escape, a story that even now waited, hidden in the shadows of London's rain, ready to test them all. And in that moment, as Noah's eyes lingered once more on Ethan and Liam's breath caught silently in his chest, the question remained unspoken: who had truly stepped into danger first? Part 2. Invisible Threads. Some bonds form quietly, not in bursts of thunder, but in the slow weaving of small, ordinary moments. The kind that at first appear fragile, yet over time grow strong enough to shift the course of hearts. In the days following that rainy encounter, the rhythm of London carried, on buses rumbling down wet streets, laughter spilling from pubs, the restless breath of the city moving with its millions of lives. Yet for three young men, the city's pulse had begun to beat differently, carrying them into an invisible dance none of them could quite control. Ethan returned to his dormitory in Bloomsbury, a place of narrow corridors and humming radiators, of windows fogged with condensation and stacks of textbooks balanced precariously on desks. For him, the dorm was both a shelter and a cage. The walls carried the muffled sounds of other students' lives, laughter, music, whispered confessions, but Ethan often withdrew into his own space, surrounding himself with sketches of arches, bridges, and buildings that felt sturdier than people ever could. Liam, though not part of the university, found himself there often. After long hours behind the cafe counter, his restless energy did not allow him to vanish into solitude. He sought Ethan out with the unspoken excuse of study sessions, claiming he was only curious about architecture, when in truth he was drawn to the stillness Ethan offered. Together they sat at the small desk beneath the yellow lamp, pages rustling, pens scratching, the silence between them comfortable in a way words could rarely achieve. Slowly, Ethan began to notice the difference. The careful barrier he had always kept around his heart seemed to thin whenever Liam was near. He found himself looking forward to those evenings, the sound of Liam flipping through notes, the faint rhythm of his foot tapping against the floor, The way his presence filled the cramped room with warmth, stronger than the radiator ever gave. There was an ease there, and yet, beneath that ease, something else flickered. A spark that unsettled Ethan, because it hinted at desire, and desire meant risk. But invisible threads are rarely content with only two strands. Noah began to appear more frequently, his timing always suspiciously precise, as though he knew exactly when Ethan's world was at its most vulnerable. He would arrive with the grace of someone who never needed to knock too loudly, his voice smooth, his gestures practiced. At first, Ethan accepted his presence politely, an occasional walk back from class, an invitation to a quiet cafe tucked in a side street, a conversation stretched late into the night about books and art. Yet behind every moment lay Noah's intent, the quiet determination of someone who did not simply admire but pursued. Liam felt it immediately. The way Noah leaned closer when speaking to Ethan, the way his eyes lingered with a mix of curiosity and claim, it gnawed at Liam like a slow fire beneath the skin. Though he tried to dismiss it, jealousy seeped into him in ways he could not entirely control. Each time Noah's name appeared, spoken lightly in Ethan's voice, Liam felt his chest tighten, as though the ground beneath their fragile bond was beginning to fracture. And still, Ethan drifted between them, unaware of how visible his indecision had become. He told himself Noah was only a friend, yet his heart did not rest easy in Noah's presence. He told himself Liam was only a companion in study, yet his pulse betrayed him in those quiet hours, beating faster when their shoulders brushed, when their eyes met unexpectedly in the lamplight. The city itself seemed to mirror their entanglement. At night, neon lights painted the wet streets in shifting colors: blue, red, gold, while footsteps echoed through alleys that twisted like secrets. Ethan walked those streets with both Liam and Noah, at different times, in different moods, yet each walk deepened the knot forming within him. With Liam, the air was alive, buzzing with unspoken tension and the comfort of closeness. With Noah, the air shimmered with allure and danger, a promise of intensity that both fascinated and unsettled him. It was a single message, typed with careless ease, that finally pulled the threads too tight. 1. Evening. After hours bent over sketches with Liam, Ethan's phone buzzed. A simple notification glowed on the screen, Noah's name shining bright in the dim room. The words were harmless at first glance, no more than a line about meeting for coffee tomorrow, perhaps a hint of humor tucked in. But it was the timing, the familiarity, the subtle undertone of something claimed, that made Liam's blood run hot. He saw the message before Ethan could turn the screen away. The sound of his breath caught sharp in his chest, like glass cracking under pressure. His hands stilled mid-motion. The air in the room suddenly charged, heavy, almost vibrating. Ethan felt it immediately, the shift so abrupt it made his own pulse stumble. Jealousy, raw and unfiltered, surged through Liam. It was not simply about the words on the screen, but about everything that had been building: the lingering gazes, the unspoken rivalry, the fear of losing something he had not yet dared to name. The fire that lived beneath his skin roared higher, and for the first time, Ethan saw it not as energy, but as a storm threatening to break. Ethan's heart twisted. He had not meant to hurt, had not even realized how deeply Liam's emotions had rooted themselves. Yet as he looked at Liam's clenched jaw, at the silence trembling like thunder before a strike, he felt the weight of something he could no longer ignore. His own heart, so carefully guarded, began to beat against its walls, as though demanding release. For the first time, he asked himself not what others wanted from him, but what he wanted. And the question terrified him. The night outside pressed close, rain tapping softly against the dormitory windows like fingers drumming in impatience. Neon lights flickered in the distance, their reflections bending across wet glass. Inside the room, silence stretched taut, fragile as a thread pulled too far. Ethan's eyes moved between the glowing message on his phone and the storm gathering in Liam's expression. A realization whispered within him, unsettling and undeniable. Whichever path he chose, hearts would break, perhaps even his own. And yet, even as fear coiled tighter around him, Another thought emerged. Fragile but insistent, was it possible that his guarded heart had already chosen, long before he dared to admit it? The question lingered, unresolved, as the rain outside grew steadier, as though the city itself waited for his answer. But no answer came, not yet. Only silence, heavy and trembling, carrying them into a night that promised storms yet to come. Part 3. Between love and hatred, storms have a way of exposing what calm skies cannot, peeling back the surface of the world until only truth remains. That night in Soho, the city was wrapped in rain and amber light, every drop glistening like fire as it slid across the slick pavements. Neon signs buzzed faintly above doorways, their reflections bending and trembling in puddles that stretched like mirrors across the ground. The air was heavy, charged with the restless hum of thunder pressing at the horizon, and in that charged stillness, 3 young men carried storms of their own. Ethan walked between them, his umbrella trembling under the relentless drizzle. To his left, Liam's steps were sharp, striking the pavement with a rhythm too quick, too restless, as though his body sought release for emotions he could not name. To his right, Noah moved with elegance, his stride unhurried, his coat shielding him from the rain, as if the world bent itself around him. Yet beneath Noah's polished surface lived a silence that clung too tightly, a silence Ethan could not ignore. They had wandered into the narrow streets of Soho, where the rain amplified every sound, the hiss of car tires over wet asphalt, the clatter of laughter spilling from crowded pubs, the steady drip from eaves overhead. And yet, for Ethan, the loudest sound was the pounding of his own heart. The tension between Liam and Noah had grown thick, heavy enough to suffocate. Each glance between them sparked like flint against stone, and Ethan felt caught in the sparks, unable to step aside. It began with a look. Liam's eyes burned with restrained fury as he caught the way Noah lingered too close, the way his hand brushed against Ethan's sleeve with deliberate ease. Noah, in return, held his gaze with the calm of someone used to winning battles without lifting a hand. The air cracked between them, unspoken words rising like thunderclouds too heavy to hold. Then the storm broke. Their voices rose, sharp and low at first, then louder, cutting through the rain like blades. The street, alive with the echo of neon and storm, became a stage for their collision. Ethan stood frozen between them, his breath shallow, the rain soaking into his sleeves as though even the sky pressed him down. Liam's words carried fire, raw and jagged, while Noah's carried ice, smooth but biting, each syllable sharpened by pride. In that clash, fragments of Noah's life slipped free, unguarded. His father's demands, strict and unrelenting, weighed on him like chains. The pressure to perform, to embody perfection, to silence his loneliness beneath the mask of confidence. These truths spilled out, not in confessions, but in the jagged edges of his anger. Ethan heard them like echoes through the storm, pieces of a puzzle he had never seen before. For the first time, Noah's arrogance did not appear as strength, but as armor built to hide the hollow ache of isolation. Liam's storm met Noah's with equal force, his frustration not of wealth or family, but of raw honesty, of feeling eclipsed by someone who seemed untouchable. His heart, unpolished and unguarded, bled through every sharp breath, through the tremor in his clenched fists. He could not stand the way Noah's presence pulled Ethan into a world Liam feared he could not compete with. Ethan felt as though the ground had vanished beneath him. Each revelation, each clash, pressed closer until the walls of Soho's rain-slick streets seemed to close in around him. His chest tightened with every word thrown across the storm, every glance that demanded he choose a side. He wanted to speak, to reach out, but his voice was lost, drowned in the roar of their emotions and the drum of rain against stone. The storm within him was worse. His heart, once carefully shielded, now fought against its own walls. With Liam came safety, a fire that warmed and demanded truth. With Noah came a lure, a gravity that pulled him into a world both dangerous and captivating. Between them, Ethan felt his breath shorten, as though choice itself was an ocean threatening to pull him under. Then, in a single moment, chaos reached its peak. Noah, his face pale with rain and anger, turned suddenly toward Ethan. Without hesitation, he closed the distance and pulled him into an embrace. The motion was swift, fierce, the kind of gesture that carried desperation beneath its confidence. Ethan froze, his heart stumbling wildly, his breath trapped against the press of Noah's coat. The scent of rain and expensive cologne wrapped around him, dizzying, suffocating. Liam stood only a step away, the sight cutting into him with brutal sharpness. His chest rose with a jagged breath, his hands curling tight, his body trembling with the force of emotion too heavy to contain. The amber streetlights flickered in the rain above, casting their shadows long across the pavement, turning the moment into something carved in fire and stone. Ethan's mind spun, his body caught between two storms. He did not move, could not move, as the sound of the rain pressed harder, as though even the heavens leaned closer to witness. His pulse roared in his ears, and beneath the roar lay the terrible truth. Whatever choice he made, whatever path he followed, none of them would leave unscathed. The embrace lingered just long enough for silence to fall, heavy and trembling. Then the storm broke anew, not in the sky, but in the fragile, shattering threads of their hearts. And as Ethan lifted his eyes, caught between Liam's burning fury and Noah's desperate hold, a single thought pierced through the chaos. How much longer could he stand before the storm consumed him completely? Part 4. Truths Revealed. Beneath the soft gray of a London morning, when the city still yawns awake and the first light brushes Hyde Park with pale gold, truth begins to stir quietly in the corners of Ethan's heart. The riverside cafe where he sits feels like a cocoon, the world outside buzzing with hurried footsteps and clattering wheels, while inside only the sound of spoons against porcelain and the low hum of rain against the windows reminds him of time passing. He clasps his hands around the warmth of his cup, not for the drink itself, but for the fragile comfort of holding something steady, something that does not slip away. For days he has lived in the fragile in-between, torn between Liam's fiery presence and Noah's magnetic pull. Yet inside him lies a silence heavier than the storm that once drenched them all. Ethan has always feared beginnings, for every beginning reminded him of endings he could not control. A fractured home, voices raised in anger, doors that shut harder than the rain on any stormy night. These were the echoes that shaped him, the shadows behind his calm gaze. He wore quietness like armor, gentle smiles like bandages, hiding the old ache of someone who learned early how fragile affection could be. And now, with Liam's distance cutting sharp lines through his days, he feels the truth of that fear returning. Liam's absence is louder than any argument could have been, an ache that lingers in his chest like a hollow unanswered question. Noah moves closer, appearing at the cafe as if he belongs there, his confidence draped over him like an elegant coat. To the outside world, he looks victorious, the air of someone who has stepped forward while another has stepped away. His eyes linger on Ethan with a possessiveness he does not bother to hide, his words smooth and practiced, like silk layered over steel. Yet beneath it all lies a quiet hollowness. One Ethan can almost sense an emptiness that Noah himself does not dare to name. For every smile Noah offers, there is a flicker of loneliness hiding behind, as though the weight of his father's expectations sits heavy on his shoulders, leaving him forever searching for something he cannot quite hold. It is in these silent exchanges that the tension weaves itself, invisible but unyielding. Ethan, holding his heart shut tight, finds himself drawn and repelled all at once. Noah, certain of his triumph, feels an unease he cannot chase away. And Liam, though absent from this cafe, is present in every thought that Ethan cannot escape. The memory of his laughter, his blunt honesty, the warmth of his loyalty, these linger like the scent of rain clinging to the earth, impossible to erase. Ethan tries to bury it, yet it rises within him like an old song he cannot unlearn. On the table before him rests a folded letter, the edges softened from being carried too long in his pocket. Written in the quiet hours of a sleepless night, it carries the words he never dared to speak aloud. Each sentence is heavy with longing, with regret, with the tenderness he had hidden too well. It is a letter meant for Liam, meant to explain the heart he had been too afraid to show, meant to bridge the silence that now stretched painfully between them. But Ethan never found the courage to deliver it, never trusted that his truth would be enough, so it remains unsent, tucked away, waiting like a secret aching to be discovered. As fate would have it, discovery does not wait for permission. In a moment as quiet as the whisper of a page turning, Noah's eyes fall upon the letter. His hand, steady and deliberate, closes around it before Ethan even notices. And just like that, the secret is no longer safe. Noah unfolds the paper slowly, as though savoring the unraveling of something fragile. His gaze darkens with each word, not with surprise, but with a sharp, unfamiliar sting. It is not victory he finds in those lines. It is something else entirely, something that unsettles the ground he thought he stood on so firmly. Ethan realizes too late, his heart jolting as if the floor beneath him has shifted. The letter, his hidden truth, now lies exposed in the hands of someone who was never meant to read it. Silence hangs heavy in the air, thicker than the mist outside the windows, as Noah lifts his eyes from the page and meets Ethan's gaze. There is no smile on his lips now, only a flicker of something unreadable: hurt, betrayal, and perhaps fear, all tangled together. For the first time, Noah does not look untouchable. For the first time, Ethan feels the sharp edge of what it means to be seen too deeply by the wrong person. And in that fragile, breathless pause, as the cafe hums on unaware and the city continues to move outside, Ethan knows that nothing will remain the same. The letter has slipped from his silence into the wrong hands, and with it, the fragile balance of their tangled hearts has been shattered. Yet, what Noah chooses to do with it, and how Liam might learn of it, remain questions suspended like raindrops about to fall. And so, beneath the gray London sky, the truth has surfaced, but the storm it will bring has only just begun. Part 5. Between Truth and Illusion, Which Heart is Real? Beneath the silver hush of a winter sky, where the Thames swirled with fog and Tower Bridge loomed like a sentinel over the night, 3 souls gathered for a final reckoning. The city around them seemed to blur, headlights reduced to pale orbs, footsteps swallowed by mist, leaving only the steady rhythm of water below and the occasional clang of distant bells. It felt as if London itself was holding its breath, cradling their meeting in secrecy, letting the fog shield their trembling truths. Ethan stood with his heart trembling like the lantern light caught in the breeze. Liam carried a storm within his chest, and Noah wore the elegance of composure that barely concealed the cracks beneath. For weeks, truths had been circling them like restless birds, each unspoken word heavier than stone, each stolen glance sharper than glass. Tonight, none of them could hide behind silence any longer. The air around them shimmered with the weight of confession, with the ache of knowing that this night would etch itself into memory no matter the path that followed. Ethan, whose calm exterior had so long shielded him, felt the fragile cage around his heart finally split open. The cold air stung his lungs, yet it also carried clarity, and within that clarity he saw the faces of the two who had pulled him into the labyrinth of feeling he once feared to enter. Noah's gaze lingered on him first, steady, almost regal. For a moment Ethan thought he glimpsed victory still flickering there, but then the fog shifted and revealed something gentler, something wounded. Beneath Noah's mask of pride lived the boy who had grown up under crushing shadows, who had fought to be seen yet learned too well how to hide. The weight of family expectations, the loneliness of being adored but never understood, had made him chase connection with desperate elegance. Ethan could sense it now, could almost hear the echo of Noah's silence ringing louder than the city's noise. And in that realization lay sorrow, for affection born of loneliness leaves marks that never fade. Then Liam, with his restless fire, his eyes brighter than the lamps that lined the bridge, stood like a storm trying to contain itself. His jealousy had burned, his temper had flared, but beneath the sharp edges beat a heart that had always been raw, unfiltered, unafraid to love, even when it hurt. Ethan turned to him, and in that, the moment the noise within him quieted, as if the city itself bowed to the certainty of his heart. For every doubt he had carried, for every night he feared his own feelings, it all settled now into one truth. The rhythm of his heart aligned with Liam's, steady and undeniable, fragile yet fierce. The fog curled around them as Ethan drew breath, the confession slipping free like frost dissolving under the first light. His words did not need to be spoken loudly, for the night itself carried them. He admitted that his heart, after all the storms and shadows, belonged to Liam. Yet even as he said it, a sharp ache laced through his chest, for he knew Noah had left a mark that could not be erased. Noah had given him not just rivalry, not just chaos, but also the piercing recognition of loneliness mirrored. To be chosen did not mean to be forgotten, and Ethan carried that truth like a scar glowing faintly beneath the skin. Noah did not falter when the confession came, though his eyes flickered like a candle in a sudden draft. The poise he wore did not collapse, but shifted into something more human, something gentler, quieter. He smiled, not with triumph, not with bitterness, but with the graceful sorrow of someone who chooses to bow out while still standing tall. In that smile lingered dignity, and beneath it, the unspoken promise that memory itself could be enough, even if presence could not. He chose to step away, not in defeat, but in bittersweet acceptance, carrying with him the fragments of tenderness he had touched and the shadows of what could never be. The air thickened as silence followed, broken only by the low hum of the river below, its currents endless, its depths unknowable. Liam reached for Ethan's hand, hesitant at first, then firm, his warmth seeping through Ethan's cold fingers. Their touch was not triumphant, not grand, but fragile and real, like a flame cupped against the winter wind. The fog swirled around them, softening their outlines, making them look like figures painted in water and light, and together they stepped forward, into the obscurity, their footsteps echoing faintly against the stones of the bridge. Yet, as they disappeared into the mist, the night held its question like a secret unsolved. For though their love burned in the cold, it was fragile as glass, vulnerable to the trials that had only begun. Could affection born of storm survive the tempests still ahead, or would the weight of scars and shadows pull them apart once more? The fog did not answer, only deepened, leaving the heart to wonder what dawn would reveal when the river met the light again.